From the Page to the Stage, Beyond the Book is a show that will stimulate your senses with a combination of audio and visual performances. In his books, Joe Corso hits it right on the mark when he takes us on a winding trip through the underbelly of organized crime. For more information, contact Jeffrey Weinstein of JM Productions of Florida, Inc. at jeffreyweinstein1@aol.com or 954-638-0270. Now on to the show.
And welcome to Don't Stop the Music, correct? Don't Stop the Music with this guy. He has so many moving parts, I don't know what I'm doing.
From the Page to the Stage today with Jeffrey
noticed.
Weinstein and Joe Corso.
It's amazing how the authors are coming forward. This guy that we're going to present, unbelievable story. And him and I are from the same neck of the woods in Manhattan.
Really? Are you
That's
from
right.
Manhattan?
I'm from the 3-4 precinct, and he was at the firehouse on the west side, which is not too far. Not too far.
Again, people from New York
I
have
think
many,
I know
many
the-
jobs.
I think I know this guy.
But
from the
this is
day.
great. From the Page to the Stage, Beyond the Book, the Starlight Club. I actually got a copy. I got one too. You can't ever say I took your book because you got one as well.
That's right. I had to get my own because if I don't get my own, I'll never get to see it again.
Award-winning author, the Starlight Club, Joe Corso decided not to write one book, but 33 books.
40 books. 40 books.
40
this man
books. Wow.
wrote. In 10
Unbelievable.
years, correct? In 10 years? Man, I can't even read 40 books in 10. That's amazing.
So after The Godfather and before The Sopranos, there was The Starlight Club by Joe Corso, featuring excerpts read by authors, followed by author meet and greets. Look at this. These events are amazing. You should see this PR kit. Brought to you from The Page to the Stage with Jeffrey Weinstein.
And it's interesting because we're going to be talking to both gentlemen. And the Starlight Club, there was a Starlight Club in New York City, wasn't there?
In your brain, maybe.
Wasn't there a Starlight Club in New York City?
I don't know. Let's ask the gentleman. Well, welcome, guys.
Joe,
We got
wasn't
Joe
there a
Corso and
Starlight
Jeffrey
Club in
Weinstein.
New York City?
There was a Starlight Club, but it was a social club. I took the name. I liked the name, so I took
Were
that.
you part of the social club, Joe?
Well,
Yes, Joe.
I lived across
I
the
know
street from
you,
it.
Joe. I know where you, oh man. Holy smokes. Okay, let's keep going.
You know Joe?
Yes, I know Joe.
Well, welcome, gentlemen. Welcome, Joe. Welcome, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, tell us about this, what you're doing from the page to the stage beyond the book.
Well, about a year and a half ago, I was introduced to a very award-winning author, Joe Corso, and I come to find out that he's written 40 books, and he wrote a series called The Starlight Club, which he just finished his 13th book just recently. And what we talked about was how to market beside the book, what we could do with it. Because there was such a place as the Starlight Club. And all the characters, for the most part, are true people, were real-life people at one time. And so what we decided to do was we first had our screenwriter, Carol Mendelson, who couldn't be here today, write a reading of the first book. And we performed it live with actors right before the pandemic hit at the Savor Theater in Fort Lauderdale with 6 actors. And we had a wonderful turnout, and we were going to take it further into other theaters throughout the South Florida and then expand it. And then, of course, the pandemic hit and we got shut down. And right now what we're doing with it is we have actually put together a deck plot and sent it to a literary agent up in New York, and we hope to turn it into either a miniseries or a made-for-TV movie.
Well, Joe, let me ask you, what's the idea behind the Starlight Club? How did this even get started?
The Starlight. My father had a bar in, excuse me, in Corona, Queens, and it was an unusual bar because it was like a Western bar, a long bar, and an anteroom, and it had a room that we never used because we didn't have a cabaret license, but it held 300 people. It was an anomaly. It was really
Wow.
interesting. What we would do is, if somebody wanted to have a bar mitzvah or a wedding, we'd go down to the precinct, hand the captain an envelope, and the kids would get a good price to have their wedding or bar mitzvah. And I fashioned the Starlight Club, which was a social club owned by two young men, or run by two young men, on the next street. And I like the name the Starlight Club. So I modeled my father's bar after, I named it the Starlight Club. And I named the original Starlight Club the Corona Gentlemen's Club. And the characters were all real. I mean, like, I knew a Big Red in downtown Manhattan. He was a loan shark and a bookmaker. And he had a horse that ran every Wednesday and won. And there was a Trenchy. I knew him. He spent 10 years in jail. I didn't know what for. It was none of my business. I didn't ask him. But I took a lot of those characters and sort of brought them into Queens and made a book out of it. It evolved into a rather nice. I met Jimmy the Hat once, and he's in the book, and I made him a very handsome guy, although in real life he wasn't very handsome.
I love that you say, caution, the names have not been changed to protect the innocent. I feel like my mother should be here.
Oh, she would know him too.
She probably does. My mom grew up in Sunnyside, and my grandfather had a pharmacy with a soda fountain in Sunnyside, so you probably know them. Probably know her well. Right?
Now, you've written over 40 books in 10 years. Is that correct?
Yes.
And each book is different than the last. So is it all based on the same philosophy of things that happen in your life?
No,
People
no.
that you met?
No, it's a good question. I wrote 13 Starlight Club books.
Okay.
I wrote a science fiction, the time travel series of 7 or 8 books, somewhere around there. I have a fire series. I used to be a New York City fireman, so I wrote 3 short stories and then combined them into a book, one book. And they're all true stories. And I have a Western series too. I love Westerns. So I wrote I guess 7 Westerns, you know. So I wrote, and some standalone books. I wrote a children's book called Tommy Top and the Pixie Princess, because I want to see if I can do it, if I can write something like Rowling, who I think is a great author, and come out pretty good.
You have this, the Little Treasures, and then
Lafitte's Treasures. Yeah, that's one of the standalone books I wrote. Lafitte's Treasure is a very good book. However, I have some advice for any young authors out there. Never, ever put a religious symbol on the cover of your book, because you're sure as hell gonna offend somebody. And I must have got a whole religious right congregation give me 1-star reviews on that book, while it won gold in the
look at
contest.
that, and
Because
the
of the
Time
picture.
Portal.
But
And the Time Portal, you got the swastika on here, so I'm sure you got some comments on that as well.
No, that surprisingly, I never got a comment on that. The original series was called the Time Portal, which I changed to the Time Traveler because of certain problems I had with it. But it's a very interesting series, because if I may expand on this a little bit.
Sure.
I look at time travel stories and I see people opening pocket watches and going to the future, or I see people, it never made sense to me. But if someone was injured and had brain surgery, and when he opened his eyes, he seen a skewed panoramic, maybe the life force emanating from every object. And if he's seen sort of a tear in the universe, the fabric of the universe, well, I had this fella see that, and he could never figure what the anomaly was, and he walked through it. He was in 12th century England, and so I figured if he can spot the wormholes or the the entrances to different dimensions, it might make more sense. And I wrote a series of books based on that, and I thought it came out pretty good. They won some awards.
Were you always an author?
I started writing when I was 75.
This is amazing. This is what I wanted to ask him.
70, since you've been
75.
75, so.
Why did you wait so long, Joe?
I never knew I can write. I never studied
You
writing.
never even tried.
I can't tell you a word from an ever, but I don't.
So
I
you're just
listen to the
writing
way
from your
people.
experience.
Pardon me?
You're just writing from experience.
Yeah, yeah. I listen to the way people talk, and I'm a voracious reader. I love to read anything well written. I don't care what the genre is. I just enjoy it. Right now, I'm enjoying the books on the Roman legions and westerns, but I can read anything, and I love it. You know.
You know, it's amazing. I can't use his name, but there's a gentleman who does all of these sitcoms, and his name is after every sitcom. And I don't want to use his name because we don't have permission to, but he's like Joe. He started about 30 years ago, and he writes these sitcoms, and you see them all every day. You see them on Friends, you see them everywhere. He writes them with no experience, and he's the best in the business. And I can see some of Joe's books hitting the big screen. I just am blown away that he's done 40 of these bad boys.
In
they
how many
probably
years? What,
should-
10
in 10
years?
years, and they should probably be on the screen. And he started late, but you're just writing. Your pen is doing the talking. It's not has nothing about growing. It's about school. It's about doing. And it's funny because you and I share stories about things that happen in everyday life. And here you have a guy who's actually writing it. Now the stories are changing, no names, and you're using some truth with some not truth. Is that what you're doing? They're mixing it up, or is it all real deal stories?
Oh no, it's just mixed up. In fact, the first book I wrote, I was embarrassed because who am I to write a book? But I showed it to my daughter, and she loved it. She says, "Dad, this is good." I says, "You're kidding me." She says, "No, it's good." Well, okay, I trust her. She would level with me, you know. And she gave me the confidence to write a second and third and so on. But the books, the crime books. This is an historical crime book. Goes back to the early '60s, and all the characters. I shouldn't say all, but most of the characters were real. Like I have a guy by the name of Tarzan. He was a captain in the Gallo organization. He's in the book. Trenchy, he did 10 years in Manhattan. He's in the book. Jimmy the Hat, Big Red. These were all real. Pissclam, a guy by the name of Pissclam. He was a real character. In fact, he just died recently. But they didn't. There were parts of the book that are true, which won an award for true crime, and won an award for fictitious crime. Now, how can that be? Well, parts of it were real, and parts of it wasn't.
Wow.
But and in fact, I have a trivia sheet that is incorporated in the newer books. I had those books printed for last year's show, and the pandemic hit, and it went away. The moment passed. But the new books have the trivia sheet, what's real, what isn't real. Like I have Joey Gallo killing a bunch of people in Brooklyn. In the Bronx. It never happened. But there's a lot of it that was true. And in fact, I'll tell you a quick story, and this is true. It's in the book. And I was young. Things were tough back then. And my wife was in the hospital with my son, just born. And I was expecting a check to get her out, and it didn't come. And I didn't know how to get money to get her out. So I went to Big Red, and I said, "Red, I got to talk to you." And I knew him for a number of years. I always minded my own business. I was to deliver meat down to this place. And he said, "What do you need?" I said, "I got to borrow money from you." And that's the only time in my life I ever borrowed money from a loan shark. He says to me, "Well, you in trouble?" I said, "No, I'm not in trouble." I said, "But I got a problem." He said, "What's your problem?" I told him. He said, "How much you need?" I said, $350. He said, "When are you going to pay me back?" I said, "Pay it back next week." He said, "Don't tell me that." He said, "I don't care when you pay me back. I don't care if it's next week, next year." He said, "But the day you tell me you're going to pay me back, I must get paid. Do you understand?" Now, obviously, you have to pay the man back because it wouldn't look good if his clients didn't pay him. So anyway, I borrowed the money, and I got my wife out. And the next week the check come in, and I went to him and I said to him, Red, I got your money. He said, ready? I said, yeah. So I paid him the money. I said, now what's the VIG? The interest. He said, ain't no VIG. He said, you're not a customer, you're a friend. I said, Vic, I said, Ray, don't do this to me. I said, you know, this is how you make your living. I said, I'm going to pay you the money. He said, get out of here. He said, you don't pay me anything, he says. And I felt good and I felt bad. I felt good because he considered me a friend, and I felt bad because he deserves to get the interest. But I put that in a book. And and he had a horse race that won every Wednesday. And I put that in a book. But some things were real and some things weren't. But I built a story and a series out of it because there was a war going on back then. There was the Gallo Profaci mob, you know. They split. The Gallo split from the Profacis, and there was and so Larry Gallo put certain four or five men in this bar, a few in that bar. He spread them out. So if there was an ambush or something, they wouldn't all be killed at one time. But anyway, that's in the book too. So it's I was surprised when people. I thought it was a rough book, and I gave it to a woman to edit. I felt bad because I said, you know, this is a rough book. I said, I'm afraid that, you know. She said, no, I can handle it, and she did. She did a wonderful job. Overpriced, but wonderful. I didn't know enough. If I knew it now, I wouldn't have it. But it's an interesting book because it's based on a group of people in that time frame, that period. Much of what I've written there is made up, and a lot of it is true. So the reader would have to.
You know, you're the only guy, Joe, who understands what the word VIG is.
Get
I'm
out of
sorry,
my
what?
head.
VIG. When I came down here 16 years ago,
Yeah.
I said, you know, you got to pay a VIG on certain things, right? Just like you just explained.
Yeah.
And nobody, until today, knew what the hell I was talking about. True?
He says it to me. I said, what's a VIG? He explains to me what a VIG is. And no one understands what you say until Joe sits here. It's like talking to you.
It's funny because a lot of the things that Joe talks about in the day and that life and those people and those characters and everything else, it was part of New York City in the day. The only switch here is that he was a fireman, which is a whole different outlook of some of the things, some of the characters that I knew that were in that life.
Sure.
How long were you a fireman?
I was 12 and a half years with the department, but I got hurt at a pier fire, and they retired me, you know. So, but I wrote an interesting book on that, on my time on the job. So, and I wasn't going to do it, but my editor said, you got to do it. I said, no, I don't want to do it. I said, I don't want to talk about myself. Walt Disney once said, when he asked, tell me about yourself, and he says, my father always told me that when you start talking about yourself, you spoke too long. And I said, I don't want to. She, no. So I looked it up, and I said, yeah, take a look at this. And she looked at it. She said, I loved it. So I wrote a few stories there.
So Jeffrey, tell us what's next with this whole series of books. I know you had an event before COVID. What are you
Right.
looking to do now?
Well, what we've done is we, as I said, we've
Jeffrey, talk it to your mic.
done a.
Into your mic.
What we've done is done a stage plot and a deck plot, and sent it up to Eros, who is a company in New York, who has literary agents, and hopefully the literary agent will be sending it to. It could be Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, any of those, and hopefully someone will want to buy it and turn it into a mini-series. I mean, there are 13 books here, and our thinking is each book would be 1 year in a mini-series,
Yeah.
or a full-fledged movie, 2-hour movie. But what really impressed me with Joe is the fact that he started writing, as was stated, at 75. Most people are retired at 75. And to write 40 books, over 40 books, in a 10-year period and win all kinds of awards that he has is just amazing. And crime novels are hot right now for miniseries and TV and movies. And since a lot of it was based on live characters, in fact, and there was a Starlight Club, it's a story worth telling. It's an easy read, each of the books. They each have a different title, but it falls under the umbrella of the Starlight Club. And so that's where we're at now. We also, now that the pandemic is lifted, we're going to be reviving the live show, the reading, and taking it to theaters here in South Florida and hopefully around the country with live actors. And it would be more of a reading, but we could also turn it into a full hour-and-a-half drama, 2-hour drama, with live performances. So that's our thinking right now.
You know, it's interesting because I was talking to Joe before we went on that there are book clubs now, and I know some of them that are reading books and they are reliving the characters and dress up in the book, and then they're going to different places to have their book club in session in character, which is really, really
I saw
funny.
that somewhere.
And yes, and Linda belonged to a book club, and they started doing it. And then there's some other people that I know, other book clubs as well, that are doing it. And this is prime, exactly prime for that kind of adventure to get it out there, because authors, all of a sudden we're getting bombarded with authors coming forward as well, because it's part of the arts, like everything else that we're doing. It's just a different version of the arts, but I could see one of these books hitting a series easily. I kind of like the last one you wrote, but I mean, I'm a little biased because I sort of grew up in that era when he was doing his thing. But it goes to show you, you're never too old to start and making it happen.
I want to ask Joe, what does it mean to you? How does it feel to put your past, your stories in print? What does it feel like to be able to take all those memories and put them in print? It's almost like a legacy. And
I was very lucky. I mean, to have some experiences that I can build a story around, and I feel fortunate about that. But you know, I was more afraid of my father than the wise guys. I mean, my father, he told me, he laid the law down to me, and my two brothers, and it was good. He was quite a guy, but it does feel good because, you know, it's like being a fly on a wall listening to all this here. I was working in a butcher shop, which I hated, but this was the job I had, and I would deliver meat to these various places. And this one place, I delivered meat to, and it was a pleasure, you know, because I would listen and meet these guys, and then they disappear, you know, they can do that. But I always, if they had something to talk about, I didn't want to hear it. I went out somewhere, you know. But yeah, to answer your question, it's all experience. I had, for example, in the book I have a fighter, a young guy by the name of Swifty. I call him because he knocked out guys swiftly. But there was a guy in the neighborhood, a young, good-looking fighter. His name was Dookie Muscatello, and he fought a classy Latin fighter to 2 draws. Once in St. Nick's and once in the Garden, and I had him fight 3 fights, and but he's like many of the people I've met in that neighborhood that were talented losers. You know, they had so much talent that they weren't going to go anywhere because they just, I mean, he'd fight and until he ran out of money, then he'd fight again, and it was always for the boys, and he couldn't fight anywhere else. In fact, he showed me a book, and he was training with Rocky Marciano. So I had the good fortune of meeting Rocky one night. My uncle introduced me to him, and he's a world-famous guy. And I was 18 years old. I had nothing to talk to him about. What can I talk to this guy about? And I was trying to, and then I said to him, you know, I know a friend of yours. He says, you know a friend of mine? I says to him, yeah, I know a friend of yours. He says, who do you know that I know? And I says to him, Dookie, I met Dookie Muscatello. All of a sudden he says, you know Dookie? And from that moment on, we were 2 guys talking. It was really nice because I must have spent 20 minutes couldn't think of what this, couldn't even communicate with the guy.
If these
But
walls can talk,
Dookie,
right?
Yeah.
How do people get your book? Your books.
Did
The
I
best
what?
way for them to get your books.
In the first book, I mentioned, what I mentioned was actually true. He asked me, he says, do you think Dookie would fight for me? I said, I don't know, ask him. He wrote his name down, his address, and he says, give this to Dookie, tell him to call me. I said, okay. Well, that was a little paragraph in that book, but the second book, I had Dookie become how would I say, a major part. He becomes a prominent man in these books. And I brought the fella he fought in and another heavyweight. And it was a true story about the heavyweight. There was a guy in my neighborhood, the heavyweight fight, he'd fight 5 guys in an alleyway, wouldn't think about it, but we were in line to be drafted into the Army. And he says to me, when we're getting the shots, he turns around, he says to me, listen, if I faint when I get this shot, he says, I want you to catch me. He said, I don't want to be embarrassed in front of these guys. He's a guy, he's afraid of a little needle. But anyway, I put that in the book. So there's a
Joe,
lot of things
Joe,
that were...
We're running out of time. I just want, let us know, how do we get the book? How do we find the book? How do we buy the books?
Okay. Mostly you can buy the books on Amazon as an ebook or a print book. But if you go to Barnes & Noble or Books A Million, you can order the book. I don't think they'd have it on the shelf, but you can order it. Everybody would have it. Any book outlet would get it, but you can order it immediately on Amazon.
Over 40 books. You can find them. Joe Corso, C-O-R-S-O. Go to Amazon. Just put in his name. The Starlight Club. 13 books plus all the other ones. Amazing.
And if you wanted signature or something else, let them know, because we sort of know them.
Well, you've got yours and I've got mine,
You
so
get a
we've
little
got
something,
some
something in
reading to
there.
go.
If I might just interject very quickly, if anyone wants to do a live performance of, actually it's book 1, they can contact me at JM Productions or Jeffrey Weinstein1 at AOL.com, and I'll give them more information on it. And I will close with a quick story. He was writing book 11, I believe it was. Yeah, 11. And he says to me, can I use you in my book? And I said, well, what are you going to make me? He says, I'm going to make you a hanging judge. So I'm in book 11.
It's funny, that's
Awesome.
how I mentioned the hanging judge.
The
Oh, we
hanging
gotta go.
judge.
It's kind of funny, but
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Jeffrey. Check out all Joe's books, The Starlight Club, brought to you from the page to the stage. Have a great day, everyone.
Talk to you later.
From the page to the stage, Beyond the Book is a show that will stimulate your senses with a combination of audio and visual performances. In his books, Joe Corso hits it right on the mark when he takes us on a winding trip through the underbelly of organized crime. For more information, contact Jeffrey Weinstein of JM Productions, Florida Inc. at jeffreyweinstein1@aol.com or 954-638-0270. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.
The only thing is, if you slow down,